Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Shift around. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. Let me tell you what the show is about. So, this is the show where we like to have real talk about real things, as I like to say in Trini speak, real things. As we are a part of my tutoring company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, I, Gabrielle, I'm here to tutor you. I'm here to increase your wisdom. I'm here to expand your knowledge. I'm here to grow your mindset. I'm here for you to evolve. I'm here for you to trying to think of some other synonyms, but I'm here for you um to elevate yourself. So we're all about growth, we're all about elevation, we're all about expansion, we're all about attaining wisdom here on Hot Topics. And let me tell you the topic of today's show, but let me just say one last thing that our goal is for you to leave knowing much more than what you did coming in. So we want you to gain more by the time you leave this show. And with that said, let's hop right into it. So, today's topic is let me get my banner. Why doesn't my child listen to me? That's the topic of today's show. Why doesn't my child listen to me? I'm sure as parents, as caregivers, we have those moments where the our children, they don't want to hear us, they don't want to listen to us, they ignore us. It's sort of like talking to a brick wall, or it's just talking to air, right? And you have those moments of frustration. Why doesn't my child listen to me? And we are going to dive into that. So I have my guest who's going to help me with that discussion, who's going to help me answer that question. His name is David Marcus, and I'm going to tell you more about him. So, who is David Marcus? Well, let me tell you. So, in today's challenging world, parents require new tools to help their children develop a healthy self image and emotional resilience. Many still use parenting techniques from their own upbringing, which often do not apply to current issues like the impact of social media, financial stress, and the challenges of dual income households. Here comes Dr. David Marcus, a clinical psychologist with over 40 years of experience. He offers valuable insights into developing effective emotional communication between parents and children. He provides step by step strategies tailored for various stages of child development, focusing on how to help parents create a common emotional language, tolerate intense emotions through the empty out process, and serve as a soothing presence for their children. Additionally, he discusses avoiding common parenting mistakes, understanding the emotional impact of high conflict situations, and distinguishing effective discipline from punishment, making him a sought after resource in the Cincinnati area on parent child communication and child advocacy. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Dr. Marcus to the stage. Hello, Dr.
Hey,
Marcus, how's it
Gabrielle.
going?
Okay, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So
You make me
let's,
sound too good, by the way.
I mean, oh man.
Okay,
All
okay.
right,
I'll
well,
try to live up to it.
yeah, let's get right into it. So I'm sure, parents listening right now, they want to know, why ain't my child listening? Why ain't my child doing what I tell them to do? So
Mhm, mhm.
what say you to that?
Well, what I'd like to speak to parents about, especially young parents, is how you can develop an emotional access to your children. What I tell parents is, if you have access to your children's emotionality, you'll have influence on it. You know, most parents, how we were brought up is we simply react to what our children do, good or ill, but that doesn't really teach them how to become emotionally capable. All right. It may teach them a lesson, but one of the biggest assumptions that parents make, especially with punishment, for instance, is that the message they're getting across to their children, which is typically "don't do that again," is actually the message that they're receiving. Instead of that, could be like "mommy's being mean again," or "dad can't tell me what to do," and you don't realize that because you don't have access to their emotional perceptions. In order to have access, you start early in developing an emotional language. I'd like to talk to your audience about the four assumptions that we make about our children's emotionality. And again, this is, we'll get to, what happens if it doesn't work, but this is really how you form that type of a relationship with your children. Okay. So I'll start with these assumptions of emotionality. And they're developmental in nature. It's like I said, the earliest one, and these are assumptions that we all make, by the way. And if any of these assumptions are false, you won't get an answer from your child. You'll get a blow off. You'll get, change of subject. They just won't listen. And these are the things that could be in their way of listening to you. The first assumption is the earliest one. We assume children have their emotions, that they feel them. Well, this is a pretty safe assumption to make. Children know when they're mad, when they're sad, when they're happy. And it's only in cases of extreme abuse or neglect at a very early age that a child will actually divorce themselves from their emotions. That's a very rare thing. And the way I know it as a clinical psychologist, I've only seen a couple, three cases like this. The children were not able to play. Now, all children play, and if they can't play, they're not in touch with their emotional self. They've been so intruded upon by their environment that they lose that imaginary space that we all know children have. And but that's very rare. And it actually, if that persists, what you're going to end up with is a sociopath, somebody who can do something and feel nothing because they don't have their emotions. Now, that's very rare. And I'm not going to say, oh, parents worry about this. The second assumption, which we cannot make easily, is can my child tolerate the intensity of their emotions? And any parent who has had young children knows that they experience their emotions very intensely, the temper tantrum, whatever it may be. And they can't really control that. As adults, we have ways to control that, which is we compare it to previous experiences, say this is, better than this, but worse than that, and this is what I did, and this is what I'll do again. We also have the language to express it. Young children don't have either one of those. So they experience things very intensely. And when you try to talk to them about it and they don't have the language, they re-experience the experience in their original intensity. All right. And so, I mean, I remember a little girl that I was shooting who was 3, and I asked her a question about some situation, and she went like this. She couldn't stand even hearing the question, you know, because it just brought back such intensity in her. So how do you make it less intense? And I want to talk to, parents about the role they play in that. The next assumption up the ladder, okay, they have their emotions, they can tolerate the intensity of them, but then do they have the language to express it? Now, parents really make an error here. Oh, my child is very bright, they have a good vocabulary, and they make that silent assumption that their child can express themselves emotionally effectively. That's a big assumption because that's not true. That comes from a parent attending to the child and developing what I call a common emotional language with the child. And how to do that, we can talk about. Okay. Without that, you're not going to be able to communicate because all the communication as children grow up is through words. I mean, how many times have parents turned to their young children and said, "Don't hit your brother, use your words." Yeah, if they could, they would, because they don't want to get into trouble. I had two brothers, and I'll share this anecdote with your audience. They were 8 and 10, and I had just seen them, and I was talking to their mom for a few minutes in my office, and they were in the waiting room outside the door. And all of a sudden, we hear a scream, and we both jumped up and we went out there, and there's a 10-year-old holding his arm like this in tears, and there's the 8-year-old looking like, oh boy, I'm in trouble now. And so mom says, what happened? And of course, I'm a psychologist, so I'm observing this. He bit me. And the child lifts his shirt, and he's got teeth marks on him. I mean, he really got bit. And now I'm feeling really bad for the mom. Here she is in the psychologist's office, and her boys are biting one another. And she turned to the 8-year-old and said, oh, I told you to use your words. And he turned to her in all innocence and said, I don't know how. And I turned to mom and said, that's what we have to work on. And once he developed a language, a common language with his mom, the equation is the better the language, the more the language, the less behavior. It's a pretty simple equation, but that's true. So that's the third assumption. And the last one, which is really big with tweens and teenagers, they have their emotions, they can tolerate them, they have a language. Can I safely talk to this person about how I am feeling or what I am doing? Now, that is an assumption that we cannot make. That comes through the child's history with that parent as far as whether they can trust them and feel safe to speak about what's going on with them, their emotional perceptions of things, not just what happened, but how they perceive it and how they perceive their parent, even. If their history says, well, my my mom's going to get defensive and yell at me if I tell her that I'm mad at her, they're not going to talk to mom about being mad at her because they're not going to get what they need, which is somebody to understand it and to help them work through it. So, that's just one very small example of one of the things that parents can do that gets in the way of their child feeling safe to talk to them. So, based on these four assumptions, how do you address them? Well, one of the concepts that I am talking about in the book I've prepared called Parent RX, like Parent Prescription, which hopefully will be out fairly soon, uh, is the concept of being a soothing presence. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, in its simplest form, a soothing presence is someone who's okay when we're not okay. As adults, when we think about who we turn to when we're upset, we pick particular people, family members or friends. But invariably, these people, these special people, are people who are okay when we're not. So, how to be that for a child and is not as simple as it seems. Because I use the term a soothing presence rather than a soothing person, because you cannot be an accommodating, soothing, receptive person if you're involved in chaos. If you've got a deadline tomorrow, if you got 15 emails to return, you know, two income families, you know what I'm saying? That who's around, and everybody's just putting out fires, the next fire, whatever it might be, and we part our kids off to you know a play date or a taekwondo class or whatever it might be because we don't have the time. And children, in order to develop the skills like we're talking about, need to be attended to. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. You can have the brightest child in the world and they may not have an emotional language, you know. And this is a very important part of maturation. I mean, we expect a 5-year-old to not have the language and feel their emotions intensely and act out on them. You know, 5-year-olds, yeah, we expect that. But if a 5-year-old doesn't develop an emotional language and can tolerate his emotions later in life, let's face it, an 18-year-old who throws a temper tantrum can end up in jail. I mean, it's a very important part of maturation. It's a very important part of parenting. Okay. So how do you do that is what we need to talk about. And if you haven't done it, how can you make up for it later? And there are ways to do that. So I'll stop here. And if there's any questions, or Gabrielle, if you have anything that you'd like to add or ask about.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for sharing all that. I wrote down these assumptions. So I just wanted to clarify. The first one was children have their emotions or children handle their emotions.
First one is children experience their emotions. They
They
actually can feel them.
okay.
The handling part comes later, is what I'm saying.
So children feel their emotions. And that's an assumption. And you're saying these are false assumptions that parents
They're
make?
silent, they're silent assumptions.
Silent.
We assume that a child
Oh,
experiences their emotions. We assume that they can handle the intensity of their emotions. We assume they have an emotional language, and we assume that it's safe for them to talk to us.
oh, so we assume oh, so we assume these things and therefore we act according to those assumptions.
Right. We assume, you think our child has the skill to come to us and just say, this is what's going on, you know. And they may not be able to for very lots of different reasons. I've only given you the developmental reasons, but there's
Mhm.
lots of experiential reasons that how parents can, get in the way of this, this development. I can say that.
Well, I'm also wondering, because these are I'm looking at these assumptions now. These are in the context of the child. So I'm wondering, is it safe to add that a lot of parents assume, and I don't know, maybe I'm talking from personal experience, that a lot of parents assume the child can understand, not maybe not emotions, but that they can that they'll understand adult behavior. So something
Okay.
like, why mommy is not home all the time, or why, um you know or why daddy hits me whenever he's angry, or I mean it may not go to the extreme of child abuse, but I'm wondering, is it also the assumption of, or even something like when a parent gets angry when the child doesn't turn off the lights, or the air conditioner's on too long, or the heater's on too long, because the parents have the fear of the electric bill, right? um
Yes.
or when a child, or the whenever a child is like, I want to go to McDonald's, and the mom is like, I know from my experience, might be like, you have McDonald's money, right? With the hidden assumption that that's too expensive. I don't have that money to pay for that, right?
Okay.
Um, so I wonder if could it also be that the parent assumes the child understands adult emotions, or they understand adult behaviors. I don't know if my question is making sense.
Well, I'm trying to piece it together, but do children understand adult behavior?
Maybe adult
No.
emotions. Let me rephrase it this way. So, because I'm wondering, like, okay, so let's say,
Hmm.
um the child takes something out of the fridge, but they leave the fridge door open. They don't
Hmm.
close it. The mom gets angry at the child and says, "Close the door." Um, but maybe the child, they close it, but the next day they do it again, right? They take something out the fridge, they don't close the door.
Hmm.
Mom gets angry, close the door. Child closes the door, then it happens again. Maybe like 3 days later, child opens the fridge, takes something out, they don't close the door. Mom snaps, right?
Okay.
So I think it's is it would is there I'm wondering if there's a if the parent also well, let me say this. So the child may not understand that when you leave the fridge door open, the things in the fridge don't stay cold and therefore can spoil, or they don't understand that it takes electricity to keep the fridge running. And so when you leave the door open, it's actually pulling more electricity to keep things cold. And the more electricity that's being used, the more the parent has to pay for it in the electric bill, right? So they may not understand mom is angry because you keep leaving the door open, not realizing that you're actually pulling more electricity when you do that because things it's not being trapped inside the fridge, or that food is about to spoil because you left the door open and mom has to go buy grocery shopping, but now things are expensive, right? So the child may not
Mhm.
understand all that. So I'm wondering if with my long-winded explanation is there an assumption from the parent that the child understands that things are expensive, or you know should is there an expectation that the child should understand why things are expensive, or not why things are expensive. I'm sorry, I'm very long-winded, but is any of this making sense?
I'm
Like,
trying.
can they? That's really bad. I'm sorry. Is there an expectation from the parent that the child should understand adult worries or adult concerns, or why you need to keep the fridge closed because things spoil, or you need to keep the
Yeah.
fridge closed because it's pulling out more electricity in order to keep things cold. And when you use more electricity, it translates into money, which then mommy has to pay. So then the more electricity is the more money, and mommy doesn't
Yeah.
have to pay that. Mommy doesn't
Well,
want to pay that.
right.
I don't know if
Okay.
that makes any sense. I'm so sorry.
Well, I'm gonna try to make sense of it,
Yeah.
Gabrielle. We'll work it out. Um, First of all, it depends on the age of the child. Obviously, you don't expect a 4-year-old to understand about electricity and money and stuff like that. It's out of their kind of experience. All right. They don't think that way. Now, an older child may understand that. It may have been explained to them 4 times, which is why mom's so frustrated, right? And question becomes, and I've used this term before, what is the child's emotional perception of mom saying close that door? Okay. It could be, I want to please mom, so I'll close the door, but obviously that's not happening. Is it because mom used, has not done discipline correctly, which is a whole topic we have to talk about? There's a history here, in other words, with a child saying, "Oh, here goes mom again," and he's being more typically is called passive aggressive and says, "Oh, okay, I'm just not going to listen. I'm just not going to do it because I'm mad at mommy or because mommy's a pain in the neck or whatever it might be." Um, but the parent is just reacting to the behavior without getting to the source of why the child's doing it. You see what I'm saying? And until they get to that source, the child's going to do that. If they get punished severely enough for it, they'll do something called symptom substitution. Okay, I'll close your door there, but I'll do something else to show you that I'm still mad at you. I'll leave a mess in my room. I'll do, something like that. And the parent, what typically happens when the parent doesn't have access to their children's emotional perceptions is they simply react to the behavior. Okay, if you didn't learn your lesson when I grounded you for 2 days, I'm going to ground you for 5 days. Well, now if the child thinks mom's being mean, now all that's saying is mom's being a jerk. You know what I'm saying? And the child has not learned what's important here, which is how to make well-advised decisions about what you do. All they're doing is reacting to mom's discipline. Actually, it's not discipline, it's punishment. There actually is a difference that I can explain to your listening audience between discipline and punishment. We use those terms sort of the same, but they're not. All right. And so, what I'm assuming here, unless a child's very young and simply doesn't understand that, and his mind is, 100 different places, um, the older child, 6, 7, or 8, older and older, they're reacting to something within them. They're giving mom a message of some sort that all she's doing is reacting rather than responding to. What I try to help parents to do is learn how to respond to these types of things so the child can actually learn something from the experience, not just don't do it again. Because don't do it again is not going to teach them anything because that's not the message they're getting. They're getting mom's being mean again, dad's a jerk, you know? You see what I mean? These are the assumptions that parents make. And the reason I know, I'm a parent myself, but the reason I know is because I've seen hundreds of children and they tell me these things. Once they get access to their emotional perceptions, I say, oh, my dad's this, so I ignore him, or, I'm afraid of my dad, or my mom is always away, so why should I do what she tells me to do? And, there's all kind. Pick your variation of a theme, I'm saying. But without access to that, without knowledge of that, all you're going to keep doing is react to their behavior. And it's not going to work very well. First of all, it's not going to teach them any different. Second, once they hit teenagers, you know, it becomes a power struggle. And parents invariably lose the power struggle with their teenager. The teenager finds a way around them, you know. Okay, you're not grounded for 5 days, you're grounded for a month. Well, good luck grounding somebody for a month. I mean, it's just not going to happen. They'll find a way around it. And then all they do is resent you. They know they can't talk to you, so they'll go talk to somebody else. Probably another teenager who can't talk to their parents either, which is not a good mix, as you can imagine. And so there's a lot that needs to be developed here between parents and children to avoid that. Why doesn't my child listen to me? I gave you the basic assumptions, but how they play out is that's where the skill comes in. That's what your audience needs to understand. How to be a soothing presence, how to develop a language, how to make it safe for your child to share their emotional perceptions so that they can learn. We use the term resilience a lot, Gabrielle. It's sort of become a catchword. My child is resilient, resilient, resilient. What does resilient mean? A lot of parents use it as an excuse. Oh, they'll bounce back. They're resilient. What do you mean they're going to bounce back? How? How are they going to bounce back? You know, but get real quiet and ignore it and, and push it down because they can't talk about it. Oh, well, I guess it's okay because they're not talking about it. That's not resilience. That's repression. And that leads to depression. It doesn't work that way. So, what is resilience? I'm going to give you my definition of resilience because it fits into what we're talking about. When a child can relate a difficult experience, tolerate the intense emotions of it, feel free to express it so they can work it out, so it doesn't stay inside very intense. That's the soothing presence's job. And then work with that soothing presence, that other person, to kind of figure out what to do about it. Okay. And we have a common word for that. It's called wisdom. The child has gained wisdom. Been there, done that, know what to do. This is a lifelong process. And when a child grows up, we don't call it resilience anymore. You know what we call it? Stress tolerance. We call it stress tolerance. They can handle stressful situations. And this is how they do it. And what's one thing that parents need to understand is there are certain things that their children take in from them that are unspoken. It's called internalization. They internalize certain things from their parents. All right. It's unspoken, it's just a reaction. And one of those things is how to react to stress. If a parent aggresses against stress, spanks, whatever it might be, their child, when they grow up, will do the same thing. That's what they know. This is one of the reasons why children who have been abused, when they grow up, they will swear up, down, and sideways they would never do to their own children what happened to them. But under significant stress, we what's called regress. We regress back to these internalized responses and they'll hit. They'll regret it later once they're not regressed anymore, but now it's been passed down. So, this is why there's family histories of abuse. The nice thing about what I'm talking about, if you're a soothing presence, that the parent can be and help their child to gain wisdom in this way by working out their own situations, the child will grow up and they've internalized that soothing presence and they can do that for their spouse and their children. It's a wonderful legacy. But in order to do that, I talk to parents sometimes about lifestyle, you know, uh, if you're always distracted and you're always, on edge yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to be calm and receptive to your children. And children, if this is not something they just want, attention. They want attention. I don't like that term because it denotes negative attention, you know, and that's not it. Okay, if a child's seeking negative attention, there's a reason for it. And the reason for it is because when they tried other ways of getting the parent to attend to them, it didn't work. Let me explain this a little bit further, if I may. The analogy I use, okay, the, the difference between a want and a need. Well, we may want a new van, but guess what? I don't have the money right now for a new van, so I'll keep the old one working for a while longer. That's something you want. Something you need is like basic needs like air and food and water. Now, do these needs go away if you can't afford them? No. If you haven't had air for 3 minutes, all you can think about is getting that next breath of air. Water in 2 days, food maybe in three, so they intensify. The reason I use that analogy is because emotional needs work the same way. If they're not met, they intensify. They'll intensify, and the child will do something more visible, sometimes something more obnoxious to get the parent to attend to them. Because how are they going to develop an emotional language or feel safe? How are they going to how are they going to build their self-esteem? Because self-esteem is, the experiences that form self-esteem start external to the child, which we can talk about as well. And eventually those are internalized and the child now feels a sense of themselves that they feel good about themselves. Okay. That needs to be attended to. Children need predictable time and predictable parents. You know, if you think about it, the basis of any emotional relationship is predictability. When we first meet somebody, we spend a lot of time together and we're assessing in different situations how they react. And the more we can trust their reactions, the more we trust them and can divulge more about ourselves. That's courtship a lot of the times, when you're seriously dating somebody. Well, for children, having a parent there at predictable times so they know when the parent's going to be there for them and how if they can predict how their parents are going to react when they try to talk to them about tough things. Um, that's the basis of not only them trusting their parents, but it's also the basis of their security. Okay. This is why, for instance, children of alcoholics have a very difficult time because an alcoholic, the alcohol makes you unpredictable. You can be happy one time when you're drinking, you can be really mean the next time. There's no predicting the impact of alcohol. Depends on the situation, depends on the disinhibited responses, which is part of alcoholism. And so the child, doesn't know what to expect, and they can't trust that person, and they feel insecure. Um, I have to talk to parents about things like that, because their children need them to be predictable, and predictably responsive. And if you're not, if the work's getting in the way or everything else is getting in the way, and you can't find predictable time with your kids, and you can't be predictable because you're scattered to the winds because of modern day impingements on you, like I said, financial stress, fighting with your spouse, your kids are acting up. Okay, you're reacting. You're not really helping this process that we're beginning to talk about, which I'd like to talk about the actual process in a moment. But is there any other questions you may have before I go into that?
So, are you so are you saying that like children respond the way they do because they're reacting to their environment? They're reacting to what parents are doing?
Yeah, I am saying that. If it starts early enough, that's true. Later on, when they have experiences outside the home, they may be reacting to those. But how they react is the parent's responsibility to show them this is how we deal with these things. We do use our words. We do try to handle the intensity of what you're experiencing. And I am here for you in a predictable way. So you can do that with me and gain wisdom. Okay.
Mhm.
Because, between the ages of 13 and 19, these children are supposed to become adults. And what we really want is adults, young adults who make what we call well advised decisions and not just react to a situation, but cope with them. You know, that's a skill. That doesn't just happen because you hit 18. You see what I'm saying? And so this is an essential part of parenting, and I'm glad we're getting a chance to really explore it, Gabrielle, because I've had to go through this so many times with parents because they don't realize how to truly have an impact on their children. They just assume that, you know, if I do the logical thing, which is, give a consequence, don't do it again, blah, blah, straight behavior modification, it doesn't work because of all the assumptions that you're making about your child, you know.
Mhm.
If your child has attentional difficulties, okay, they're not going to remember to close that refrigerator door, okay? They have a very short attention span. I'm not, it's not an excuse. You have to work with that, and you can work with that. But I'm just saying there's so many things that can get in the way. Parents being able to really understand what's going on with their children.
So now are you saying it's so with that example, not closing the refrigerator door, you're saying it depends on the age. But so it should be an understanding of the mindset of a child. So that's what you're saying. So like a 4-year-old may not understand why the door should be closed, right? It's, because they don't have a full awareness at that age, but you're saying like a 14-year-old should understand why to keep the door closed. And if they don't close the fridge door, you're saying it's something deeper going on?
Yeah, there's a reason for it. There's simply a reason. You have to figure out the reason. Okay. Are they
Mhm.
just being an obnoxious 14-year-old saying you can't tell me what to do? That's not atypical of a 14-year-old. They're going through a process called individuation, which means I got to be me. And then when you
Mhm.
start telling them what to do with your finger in their face, you got to do this, they say, you're treating me like a kid. I won't tolerate it anymore. You can't treat me like a kid, and they'll do the
Mhm.
opposite. They'll rebel, as they call it. You know, yeah, ironically, adolescents have to rebel. How seriously they rebel depends on the relationship with their environment and their parents. But you can handle, rebellion if you know how to do it. But they have to because who do children individuate from? Their parents, right? Um, it's true. I had it's a phase. I had a friend, and she had a very sweet daughter. Pinks and whites, and was nice and compliant, very nice. And then she hit 15, black, nose rings, whatever, you know what I mean? She gave her mom hell all during that year. Okay. You can't tell me how to. She hit 16. Off came the rings. Off came this, off went the black and the eyeliner and all that other kind of stuff. And she turned to her mom and said, Mom, you're not half the jerk you were last year. Like, oh, the mom didn't do anything different. They have to become their own person. And how do they have to become, and then they individuate from their parents. Okay. So that needs to be handled. And if you develop this capacity with your child to be a soothing presence and make it safe for them, you will help them deal with things like, rebellion, peer pressure, all the new identities that come up in adolescence, which is like the sexual identity, status, the popularity thing becomes important. All these things that are very, very difficult for young teenagers. And
Mm.
you can help them with that if you have access. Access to their emotions is influence. Without it, all you're doing is reacting to their behavior.
So is it a lot of parents are reactionary? Like I'm getting a sense from like there needs to be an understanding of the developmental stage of the child.
Yes.
So like teenagers are going to rebel because they're, as you were talking about, they're figuring out sexual identity, there's peer pressure, there's I would even add academic pressures from school as well. Um,
How smart you are,
I
how
would also,
athletic you are. Yeah.
yeah, there's also a lot of maybe more so boys with like hormonal changes. Maybe middle schools will be more girls, but there's also biological changes that's going on, and
It's part of the
they
new
may not
identity.
fully, all of a sudden, like your 12-year-old is moodier now, right?
Sure.
Right, and your son used to have a high pitched voice, and now he has a deep voice now, and now he has to
No, he
navigate.
talks like this now.
Right? Or it could be that too, like why my 16-year-old boy still has a high pitched voice, right? So it might be all these biological changes or even non-biological changes, right? And it's factoring all those things in, like the kids are going through a lot of, you know, all these, I guess, changes and pressures and
Mhm.
if I'm understanding you correctly, that parents should be more understanding of that and not, be
Well,
so reactionary. Like maybe they don't want to listen to you. Someone was, I don't
mhm.
know. I don't know how to phrase
Well,
it,
I
but
want no, no, no. Let me
yeah.
respond before I lose track of all this stuff and what we're talking about here. The word understanding. Okay, let's because you use that word a lot, Gabrielle. Understanding. All right. Like they should understand, or parents should understand, or their kids should understand. No, no. We learn from our own experiences. Okay. That's what we need to do. What we understand comes from what we've experienced. All right. So the shoulds, throw them out. All right. Because our job is to help them to live through these experiences and learn from them. Dad tells his son, don't go out and drink 12 beers. I did it when I was your age and I ended up with my head in a toilet bowl. So what does his 15-year-old son do? He goes out with his buddies and drinks 13 beers, ends up with his face in a toilet bowl. And dad says to him, oh, why did you do that? I told you that was going to happen. You can bet your bottom dollar that grandpa told dad the same thing. We learn from our own experience. Now, there's limits on this. I don't want parents to say, oh, just let your kid just run wild and do whatever they have just to have the experience. No, no, we can't do that. The adolescent brain does not make good decisions, period, because it's not grown up yet. That the executive function is not complete. So no, you're not going to the heroin party. I'm sorry. There's just obvious stupid things like that. But it's always this blurry boundary because a child says, you can't treat me like a kid and you telling me what I can and cannot do, treating me like a child. But the parent is still responsible for this child, this teenager. And they can't just say, okay, just go. I don't care. Just do whatever you want. They can't do that. Not only just legally, but it's not good for the teenager. They can get into trouble. You know what I mean? But here's an
Mhm.
ironic part of what I'm talking about, Gabrielle. There's something called the golden child syndrome. The golden child syndrome. And what does that mean? Well, if a teenager is too good, if they do everything their parents tell them to do, oh, my teenager never rebelled, da 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 da. Parents are making all the decisions and making all the guiding them completely. It's called being a helicopter parent. They get to college and they're on their own for the first time and they go crazy. They don't know how to make decisions. So they make really dumb ones. You see what I mean? Because they have no experience making decisions and gaining wisdom, and they don't know how. I'm thinking of
Mhm.
one teenage girl, she was pretty and she was popular and all that good stuff. Very good kid. And then she went to college, and within 6 months, she was tripping and was pregnant. I mean, this was a great kid, but her parents were very overbearing and telling her what to do, what to do, what to do, what to do. And she was afraid of her parents. So she did this, but then she didn't know what to do when they weren't there. So there's a lot to this that we're talking about. We really should talk about, I think, if you want to, um, how to go about this process of helping a child mature emotionally. The steps that parents can take to be a soothing presence, to develop a language, to make it safe for the child to talk to you. We're talking how much important that is, but we're not talking about how to do it, you know. And if you wish, we can go into that if we still have time to do it. It's up to you.
I mean, we may have to do a part 2 on this, but I would like to talk more about discipline. I'm sure,
That's another
parents
topic.
want to know, okay, because I grew up in the era of, the pow pow, right?
Okay. Okay.
But I'm sure, and I'm sure, parents have questions about the right way to discipline. So I may have to schedule you for a part 2.
Okay.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess what is the main lesson here? Because I guess my thing is like, so you're saying don't use the word should and understand. Um, I feel, and maybe again, it might be me talking from personal experience, but it's a lot of it is um maybe like I wonder if it's also like parents not taking the time to explain um why not to do certain things. Because I think
That's
the
a,
rebellion comes from, well, I see my friends do it. Why can't I do it? Right?
okay.
Or it could be, well, you don't do it. How you telling me not to do it and you don't do it?
You're
So it's
talking about teenagers,
also
yeah. Hmm.
um modeling as well. And I've also had my moments where, my parents are like, clean your room. And no, they were more like wash the dishes. And I'm like, but you put them there. So why
These are
you telling
typical
me to
kids.
wash the dishes? They are your dishes. You do it.
Yeah. It's
I
not
didn't.
fair. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't say
There's
it to her
something
face,
called
but I thought that. I can.
there's something called the fairness trap, which is part
Mhm.
of discipline. All right. And
Mhm.
this will take some explaining, a different time. It's also very important for, we haven't gotten to this part is the actual process of helping your child to develop, emotionally, how to help them to, by being a soothing presence, how to help them gain a common emotional language, to tolerate their intense emotions and making it safe for them to talk to you. These are skills that parents need to know. This is what I do for a living. This is what I advocate, to tell you the truth. In fact, that's what the book is all about. exactly that. You know, and I give you know samples in the book so people can understand it in real time. Kind of, parent says, child says, parent says, child says, at different ages, at different situations, and I annotated saying, this is what you're accomplishing when you do this. This is what you're accomplishing when you do that. You know, to really help parents. You know, I've had parents. The reason I wrote the book is because parents kept saying, "You got to write this down, Dr. Marcus, because it's helpful." And or they'll come and say, "Boy, I wish I had you in my ear Thursday night when my son was melting down," or something like that. You know, how do I handle these things? And then we can do that. I'm their resource to do that. And here's a part that maybe we can finish on, I guess. But I have my ways of accessing their children's emotional perceptions. Don't need to go into it now. That's what the therapist does. I share them with the parents and how to handle those. Your son thinks you're mean. How do you handle that? You know what I mean? That type of thing. Um, I know parents are really making progress with their kids when they come to me and tell me what their kids are experiencing rather than me telling them, because now they have access. And if I had to leave a phrase for your listening audience, would be access is influence. If you want to influence your kids, you want to influence how they grow up and mature, you need access. You can't just react to them. You need access to what's going on within them, their emotionality, their emotional experiences, how they view themselves in their world, how they view you, because all that is the filter from to what they're reacting, how they're reacting, you know. And so without understanding that, all you can do is say, "Oh, you're bad, go to your room." That's not going to do it, you know. Anyway, these topics will not be able to cover in 5 minutes. That's true, Gabrielle. This is not going to
Yeah.
happen. All right.
Yeah, we definitely gotta get a part 2. Alright, so let's, um I guess I also would also say, I mean, because I well, not that but I work with kids and, I've, seen things, as watching them grow up, as, looking over my own life, and it's, there's that fairness, like, how you telling me one thing and you yourself as a parent don't do it, right?
Hmm.
Or as like, how you telling me this, but you're not telling my sister this, or you're not telling my brother this, right? So there's the fairness, and then there's and I also think it's parents not explaining the reasons why. They're just more like, just do it because I said so.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, but you're not explaining why, right? And I think
Hmm. Hmm.
there's a frustration on the parent of, and I also think it's a lot of parents don't want to parent, right? Because it's,
Well,
and
yeah.
they don't, it's their, they don't want to deal with the child, and it's, just do it because I said so, which I think is a hidden internal frustration,
You
about,
just tell the child, you're just telling the child, "Don't bother me.
just don't bother me, leave
You're
me
not.
alone.
Yeah, you're not important. I've got more important things to think about."
Mm,
Now, where is that going to leave your child's self-esteem? You tell me. You don't have to be a
mm,
psychologist to realize that if you ignore your child, they're going to feel like you don't love them.
mm,
You don't attend to them for all these other reasons we've mentioned. You don't care. And if you don't care, there's one good thing about young children. This is good. It's called elasticity. If a child cannot get their emotional needs met from one source, they can transfer it to another. Uncle Billy, grandma, whatever it might be. This is one reason why in blended families, young children typically don't have a problem having two mommies or two daddies. But if the parent has a problem with it, the child perceives that and they have to sort of take a side now. And that's a really bad position to put a child into. They're not
mm,
geared for that. Basically, the
right.
child is put in the position of having to take care of their parents' feelings. That's a role reversal that's really destructive to children. They're not capable of that. But they try because they need their parents to be okay if they're going to be okay. So there's a lot to talk about here, Gabrielle. There
There's
really,
a
really
lot to
is.
talk about. I'm just gonna throw another tidbit in here. But I'm also wondering if, and kind of going back to the fridge thing, but like, is there an expect? I wonder if is it also an assumption that children are mind readers and know they should know what the parents are thinking.
Well, um, Sue, that's my wife. I told you I'm on vacation here, and she just walked through the door. I'm sorry about that. Um, she's going to be mad at me because I went. Yeah, but okay, that's all right. No, she knew I had this podcast to do.
Hmm.
Um, and now I'm distracted, of course.
That's
Excuse
all right.
me.
I'll just remind you. So, is there also another assumption that parents, an assumption from parents that children are mind readers and they should just
Oh,
know what the parents are thinking and
well,
what
what
the
I was
parents
going to,
want?
that's actually a deeper question than just that, to tell you the truth. Again, sometimes you know too much to be dangerous, that type of thing. And,
Hmm.
anyway, first of all, that's one of the marital fantasies. My spouse should understand me without my having to tell him how I'm feeling. Yeah, good luck with that. You want to start an argument, you just did, you know. Um, with children, I guess the simplest question is, why would you assume that? I mean, if you can't read your child's mind, why should they be able to read yours? Now, there is a codicil to this, Children, no matter how much you try to hide it, they're exquisitely aware of how their parents feel. You can pick up an infant, and if you're 10, still cry. So parents try to hide all this stuff. It doesn't work. The children can sense the tension in the house. They can sense this. You know, they may not express it because they may be afraid to, or they've never learned how to, or whatever it might be, but they're aware of it. You see, that's why I talk about to parents about their lifestyle and how they can take care of themselves. I say the biggest gift you can give to your children is to be okay yourself. Sometimes I have to do some individual work with the parents or couples work because they can't communicate with one another or they disagree on parenting styles because typically we parent the way we were parented. And if they were parented in two very different ways, there's a conflict. So what I say to parents is I'm going to tweak your parenting skills. I'm not going to say one's right or one's wrong because that's not fair. You know, we're going to learn a different way based on your children's emotional perceptions of what they need. They can agree on that. They can, unless it's a custody situation, but we're not going to get into that kind of stuff. Okay.
Hmm.
That's just another can of worms. I did that work. I advocated for children at the courts and things like that. The hardest work I ever did, to tell you the truth. But anyway, that's off the topic. But we're not going to go that far
We're not
into
going to
it.
go that deep yet.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got to bring you back on for part two. There's so much more we didn't even touch, but
Yeah. Invite
let's,
me.
we're gonna start to wind things down.
Mhm.
So on hot topics, I like to ask my guests to share words of wisdom. Um, whether it's a quote, a saying, or whatever
Mhm.
thought pops into your mind. So if there's any last words, it's really like a last words type of thing. So Dr. Marcus, do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to share?
Well, I've already said it once, but I'm going to say it again because it's so emphatically important. Having access to your children's emotions is where you get the influence on them growing up. Okay. You're not there to teach them. You're there to help them to grow up emotionally. And, there are things that you can do to develop your child's emotionality so they can tolerate things and learn from them and gain wisdom. That's one of your primary responsibilities as a parent. Access is influence.
All right, beautiful. All right, Dr. Marcus, thank you for coming on Hot Topics. I appreciate
Yeah.
you being here and tackling this topic with me. All right, so let's get to your promo.
My
Your
promo.
promo. All
Okay.
right. All right. All right. So you guys, Dr. Marcus, his information is on the screen right now if you are one of my viewers, but if you are one of my listeners, all of his contact information is in the description. So, one way or another, you have access to these
Mhm.
things. But I will just tell you, so his website is parentrx.org. He's on Facebook. It's his name. So it's David.Marcus.658250. So that's the account name part of the Facebook link. He's also on LinkedIn under his name, Dave Marcus. Well, his nickname, Dave. So Dave Marcus. You could call him.
Yeah, but
You
let
could
me
call
ex-
him. Oh, did you want to?
well, let me explain.
Yeah.
LinkedIn and things like that are sometimes not conducive to what I'm trying to do. All right. If they really want to learn more about what I'm talking about, I've done a number of podcasts describing different parts of what we've been talking about today, and you can access all of them from my website. You can just click on them and you can listen to them or watch them. And if you need, something more specific, you can contact me at dsmarcusphd at parentrx.org. That would be the best way to gain access to what I'm talking about, rather than LinkedIn, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I ask for, in case people want to follow you.
Mhm.
I like to get everything, including LinkedIn.
No, that's
But
good.
but let me just say your phone number. So your phone number is 513-470-5575. If anyone wants to call you directly,
Mhm.
and your email, which you have shared, but I'll just repeat it. It is dsmarcusphd at parentrx.org. So that is the
Mhm.
best way to contact you is via
That is
email.
definitely the best way to contact me. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of that information, of course, is on the screen right now. So tell us, um, tell us more about your practice, your business, what you do.
Okay.
Sell yourself.
So, well, your introduction, which was very flattering, you can tell a lot. Uh, but more personally, I'm limiting my practice at this point because I'm getting older. You know what I mean? It's simply that I want to do other things, and I've written the book, and I'm trying to get that out there now. Like I explained to you, and I'm
Mm,
doing these podcasts to promote the book, and to build a platform. And I've been getting a lot of consult calls, from actually all over the country. My son is doing this. I'm in this situation. My divorce is bad. Whatever it might be, and people consult with me about those things. You know,
mhm,
um, the but personally, music is my therapy. I'm a musician. I play Celtic music, and if you really want to get into it, at the very bottom of my website is a link to the CD I put out of Celtic music. So there you go. All right, if you're into Irish music, you can do that. And I'm a pickleball fanatic. Okay, I love playing pickleball. But as far as me personally, I've got 40 years of experience as a clinical psychologist dealing with families under stress. And all these ideas that I'm sharing with you, I've really learned through 40 years of experience. And most of it was actually from the children that I've seen, to tell you the truth. Okay. It helped me to be a parent. And I'll tell you one funny thing, and we can end up if you like. My son, he's the son of a child psychologist here, and he'd say what you asked before. And you go, hey, how come Billy's father's letting him do that? And Bobby's father's letting him do that? And you're not letting me do that? And I turn and say, well, your dad has a doctorate in child clinical psychology. I know better than them, and they're wrong. And he go,
mhm.
what am I supposed to say? Dad, stop playing psychologist with me. I say, I'm not playing. That's what I am. he, he couldn't win. He couldn't win that one. Anyway, so I'll let you go. If you want me to come back, write me on Podmatch or whatever it is. You let me know and we can schedule something else.
Yeah, yeah, let's do yeah, definitely, definitely. But yeah, but the book is not out. I just want to make that
Not
clear.
yet.
It's
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 in the process. Yeah, in the
in the
process.
process.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um,
You know, people
all
like
right.
yourselves are asking me to come back when the book is actually out, to tell you the truth. But okay.
So
But if you want to
it's
continue
in
our
the works. It's
conversation,
in the
it's
works.
in the works. If you want me to come back and explain so many of these other things that we've just touched upon, just we can schedule another time. It's up to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, let's do that. All right, let me just do this one thing. So that website, sorry, okay. Let me just put this QR code up here on the screen. So there's a QR code on the screen right now if you are viewing this episode. So that QR code will take you straight to his website. So just scan the QR code. It will take you directly to his website, parentrx.org. So that QR code is on the screen right now for those who are watching this on video. But yeah, so there's that QR code for you. All right. Dr. Marcus, thank you again for coming on Hot Topics. And
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, I will be in touch.
Okay. Take care, Gabrielle.
Thank
And
you.
you ever go to Nathan's for hot dogs and stuff like that?
Oh, what, in Long
Nathan's?
Island?
Yeah, they have one now there. I know
I,
that because I used to go to
I
it.
in Coney Island. Coney Island,
Yeah,
yeah. I haven't been to the one in
yeah.
Long Island yet.
I don't know if it's still there. I left Long Island a long time ago, but okay. Jones Beach. We used to go to Jones Beach. Okay. All right. I'll
Awesome.
let you go.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Marcus.
You take care. Bye.
All right, you guys. Yes. So, there you have it. So thank you for so that concludes, I will say that, another episode of Hot Topics. So now it is my promo time. So let me get my banner up here. All right, you guys. So Hot Topics, let me tell you. So Hot Topics is a production of my tutoring company, Step Ahead, a Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So that is the company that is putting all of this on for you. So, as we're talking about your kids not listening, um, it's and we do. I mean, we're more on the academic part, but it's also, connected to mental health. It's connected to self confidence. So it might be, um, my your kid may not be listening to you because they're under so much pressure at school, right? Or it could be, they may not be listening to the teachers. It could be and it is something that we alluded to in the episode is it might be a response to their environment, right? So it could be, why is my child not listening to the teachers? Why is my child not paying attention? Why is my child fighting me every time I tell them to do their homework? And it could be maybe they just don't understand it, right? And they don't understand it and they learn differently. And the way that they're being taught is not registering in their mind. And so when it comes to your child not listening to you, you always want to look underneath it, right? Because a lot of parents are reactionary and they're looking at the surface, but they're not necessarily looking underneath it. And so just kind of thinking about it in terms of school, you know, what's with all the behavioral issues and why do they keep skipping school and why are they not doing their homework and why are the teachers always complaining? And it could be, I mean, it's a ton of reasons, but one of those reasons may be maybe they don't understand what they're learning, or maybe they don't understand the teacher, or they don't like a classroom environment and they work better one to one, right? So a lot of it is a reaction to their environment. So when it comes to tutoring, when it comes to academics in school, and you find yourself in that situation where your child may need an outside an outsider to step in because whatever they have going on is not working. You know, that's where that's where we come in. That's where our tutors come in. And we can be that outside influence for your child. So, you know, if you find yourself in that situation where you're like, my child doesn't listen to me when I try to explain things to them because I did this in school and I did well, so I'm trying to teach my child, but the child ain't listening to me. It could be they need somebody else to explain it. All right. Um, so that's where we come in. That's where our tutors come in. So, you know, if you find yourself at war with your child, right? Maybe it's time for you step back, get a neutral party to step in, and we can be that neutral party. So our tutors can be that neutral party for you. So our tutors come out in person. So we do one-on-one tutoring and we do that in person as well as online. So we do that in person, but we do limit our service areas for in person. So we do in person for Brooklyn and Queens if you happen to be in the New York City area. We also do in person for all of Nassau County and the western region of Suffolk County for those in person. So we come out to you in person in certain parts of New York City, certain parts of Long Island, but New York City and Long Island is the general scope, but we do certain parts. So Brooklyn and Queens for New York City, Nassau County for Long Island, and the bordering towns of Suffolk County. So all those towns in Suffolk County that border Nassau County, that's us. We also service that area. So if you happen to be in any of those areas and you want a tutor to come out to you in person, hit us up. Let me tell you our website. It is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. So you go to our website, you'll see where it says request a tutor. You'll see all the areas that we serve in person. So you'll see everything that you need to know. We also have specific grade levels that we work with and specific. So, well, we generally do the core subjects, but we do have specific grade levels. So you can go to our website to learn more about that. So let me just say that website again. It is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. So go to our website, request a tutor, book a tutor. You know, you know you need that neutral party, you need someone else to step in. Let our tutors do that for you. I also encourage you to follow us across social media. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, all with the account name A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, all one word. We're also on X and TikTok. Our account name is ASATS2013. We're also on Eventbrite and WhatsApp as well. So it is our name, but the words are spaced out. So it's A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So make sure you follow us across our social media. Stay in touch with us. Um, check. Make sure you follow our announcements as well. But the we also have a text list and an email list as well, but I encourage you to go to the website to sign up for those. But if you've missed any of this stuff, everything is on our website. It is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And you can also follow me personally. My name is Gabrielle Crichlow. You can follow me personally on Facebook and Instagram. It is Gabrielle.Crichlow. And you can follow me personally on LinkedIn. It is Gabrielle-Crichlow. So make sure you check that out. All of that is at the bottom of the screen right now if you happen to be a viewer. But if you are a listener and you're listening to this on a podcast like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Good Pods, all of the links are in the description, you guys. So make sure you check it out. And before I go, I just want to encourage you guys, however you are taking in the sound of my voice, whether you're watching on video or listening on a podcast, I encourage you guys, give me like 5 minutes of your time Let me know your feedback about today's episode. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Did you have any questions? Maybe you have questions that you wanted to ask. Maybe there was something that I didn't address and you wanted to hear more about it. Leave your feedback in the comment section, you guys. Leave it in the comment thread, in the comment section. Even if you're listening on a podcast, so like Spotify or Good Pods or Apple Podcasts, there's that comment section as well. So 5 minutes every time, you guys leave them comments, drop them comments, you guys. All right. Well, that is it. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Hot Topics. I look forward to you joining me at the next one. Thank you guys. And don't forget, you guys, I'm trying to think of a moral. What can we end with? I can't think of a moral. I'm trying to think of how to conclude this episode with a fancy moral. Um, I can't think of it, guys. I can't think of a fancy moral right now. I'm so sorry. I gotta think of a fancy moral. But thank you for joining me, and I look forward to you seeing me next time. Thank you guys. Bye.